A week and a half ago, I was walking with my daughter down 3rd Avenue holding her hand, when 20 feet away, a man ripped a photograph of an Israeli abducted by Hamas off a lamppost. I knew this was happening all over Manhattan, but seeing it with my own eyes stunned me. My daughter felt my grip tighten and begin to pull her toward the man. "Daddy, don't," she whispered. I didn't, but had my daughter not been there, I would have confronted him. Israel's efforts to rescue the hostages and protect its people have sparked a conflagration of anti-Semitic rhetoric and violence. How ironic. Terrorists brutalize Israelis, and when Israel responds, Jews are villainized as butchers, colonizers, and oppressors. On campus quads, in academic halls, and at street rallies around the world, protesters accuse Israel of genocide when Hamas includes genocide in its charter. And since Israel lies beyond their physical reach, the most violent activists assault the nearest Jew instead. Whenever the Israeli-Palestinian conflict flares, attacks on Jews escalate. But over the last month, the Anti-Defamation League reports anti-Semitic incidents in America increasing nearly 400%. The trend represents the inversion of a subterfuge long employed by anti-Semites on the left. To disguise and sanitize their hatred of Jews, they pillory Israel and Zionism instead. "We love Jews," they claim. "Our problem is with Israel." Well, now their masks are off. Instead of attacking Israel because of its association with Jews, they attack Jews because we are associated with Israel. As Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt, U.S. Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, explains, anti-Semites punch up against those perceived as in control. Israel haters deem the Jewish state responsible for all Palestinian suffering. Jew haters allege that we manipulate the economy, the media, the government, and institutions of higher learning. And given our successes in many walks of life, we are perceived as privileged, beyond the reach of discrimination, and not needing the protection other minorities deserve. Never mind that according to Pew Research, 1 in 4 U.S. Jews struggle to make ends meet, and 1 in 3 Holocaust survivors live in poverty. And since when is it a privilege to live in fear of physical violence? American Jewish organizations spend millions of dollars a year on security that Christian institutions, fortunately, do not. One cannot deny a double standard where anti-Semitism is concerned. Most American Jews lean left socially, if not politically, and fully support the thoughtful diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives recently implemented addressing microaggressions against other minorities. So why are those targeting Jews often met with silence? Perhaps some progressives fail to recognize their blind spot for anti-Semitism because suggestions of bias challenge their self-perception. Progressives claim to fight injustice, so the problem must be with the Jews themselves. As many of you know, last week I flew for 2 days to Israel as part of a rabbinic solidarity mission. In many ways, the country is now difficult to recognize. The city streets, normally gridlocked with cars and pedestrians, are empty. Hotels in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, resorts in the Dead Sea Basin, and Eilat, all typically bustling with tourists, instead shelter evacuees from communities ravaged by Hamas and others the army has moved out of harm's way. The loss of October 7 touches everyone. Thousands were murdered, injured, or abducted, but millions are afraid, scrambling regularly for bomb shelters. Some Jews now fear their Arab Israeli neighbors, who themselves are afraid. And yet Israelis are resolute. Together we will prevail, proclaim billboards and banners. Though polls show Israelis have little confidence in the government that failed to protect them, they have great faith in themselves, rightly so. Citizens of every political stripe have aligned, setting aside the divisions that had riven the country around judicial reform. Volunteers from every sector of society have stepped forward to deliver whatever aid is required wherever it is needed. Ultra-Orthodox Jews who once sought exemption from military service are enlisting, and hundreds of thousands of reservists are ready to fight in the most dangerous of ground wars. American Jews can learn from Israel's resolve. Just as Israel refuses to be bullied by international pressure to stand down against Hamas, American Jews must not stand down against anti-Semites. There are different ways to defend the Jewish people, one Israeli soldier explained to me. He and his comrades will do their perilous job rooting Hamas terrorists out of their strongholds. Israeli citizens will do theirs, taking care of everyone directly impacted by the tragedy of October 7th. But those of us in America have a role to play too, advocating for the swift return of the captives and for Israel's right to live free from danger, calling out those who suggest moral equivalency between Hamas's barbaric assault and Israel's efforts to protect itself, and challenging anyone who insists Hamas's actions be viewed in historical context as a legitimate resistance to Israeli occupation. Even those of us vehemently opposed to Israeli occupation must speak with conviction this truth. For Hamas, ending the occupation means ending Israel. Now, I know many of you are anxious, maybe even afraid. But I want to say to you not tonight that we're going to be okay, because we're going to withstand this wave of anti-Semitism in America by holding each other up, by showing up, Jews and non-Jews, at synagogue worship and at Jewish communal events. There is strength in numbers. Those who would intimidate us or do us harm will see that to strike at one Jew is to strike at all Jews, and we won't have it.